You are listening to the Break Time Tech Talks podcast, a bite-sized tech podcast for busy developers, where we'll briefly cover technical topics, news snippets, and more in short time blocks. I'm your host, Jennifer Reif, an avid developer and problem solver with special interest in data, learning, and all things technology. As promised in last week's episode, I will provide an update on my latest adventures with the Neo4j LLM Graph Builder application, talking about its features as well as some gotchas that I've discovered along the way. Then I read an article this week about developer relations for startups and how or why to help developers reach their aha moments with the technology. Our first topic up today is the LLM Graph Builder update. I've hinted at this in previous episodes, but this is a tool that makes importing unstructured data into Neo4j, which is a graph database, easier. With this latest wave of the AI era, you have a lot of people taking unstructured data, so documents or PDFs or images or so on, and wanting to import that or add that to their LLM to make sense of it. And so the LLM Graph Builder is a way that you can put those documents and structure them into a graph database, which is where you have entities and then the relationships between them. Typically, a graph database is good for a lot of structured data, networks, and so on, but it can also be really, really helpful when you're looking at unstructured data and the connections between those as well. The LLM Graph Builder is a way to make that process easier. It usually requires quite a bit of upfront work and some data modeling and data design and so on, but this tool aims to make that process a little bit shorter and hopefully a little bit easier. So the LLM Graph Builder tool takes documents, images, PDFs, URLs, or storage buckets as input, and you can drag and drop or you can pick and choose files and so on for it to ingest. And then the LLM is going to determine the structure, or you could also specify some outline structure from a section of text or adding some custom labels and relationships that you want it to use as a guide. Now, again, as with most LLMs, it's really helpful if you provide that guide. It's going to do a better job if the humans involved can help guide it into the things that you want it to do. You can run this app, the Neo4j LLM Graph Builder, as a web page, and that link is included in the documentation. Or you can also pull the repository locally and use local LLMs and run that entirely locally if you need to. This tool has some really nice things about it, but there also were some gotchas that I've discovered as I've been working through it and interacting with it more. First of all, if you have a lot of documents or large documents, that's going to take some time to load in. It's better to split some of those very large documents into smaller parts. There are a few different reprocessing options, so if something gets stuck and is just spinning, trying to process, doesn't move for a long time, you can actually kill that or cancel it and reprocess it. There's 3 different options for you to reprocess. All of those work fine, but they don't, at least I have found that they don't reprocess automatically. You have to wait until everything finishes and then click those to reprocess and generate it again. So it doesn't reprocess just automatically when you tell it to reprocess. You have to actually click some buttons to make it do it. Then the next thing is specifying some sort of structure as far as data model is very helpful. I mentioned that with LLMs, they work better when you guide them into kind of a general sense of where you want them to be. And this is the same case with data modeling. If you can specify some labels and relationships that you want it to use as kind of a guide, then it does a better job at importing the data rather than just saying, here's documents, good luck. That doesn't usually get you as good of results. The next thing is that removing the table of contents and the glossary and bibliography sections are actually helpful when you put the data into Neo4j. My assumption for the reasoning behind this is that the similarity of the terms being organized together alphabetically does not necessarily mean they are more relevant to each other. For instance, if you have a couple of terms that are next to one another in the way they're spelled, so when you organize alphabetically, they would be next to one another in the glossary, that doesn't mean that they're related or very similar topics, right? Or that they mean similar things. So that is my assumption for why you wouldn't want to include the table of contents in the glossary or bibliography. But again, I'm not for sure on that. I'd have to run my own tests or really look at the code. There's also a few different models to choose from with the Neo4j LLM Graph Builder, but one thing that I found is that at least the OpenAI one is using a Hugging Face transformer under the hood. So the embedding dimensions are not the standard 1536 that is typical. This was really difficult when I chose the OpenAI embeddings in the LLM Graph Builder tool, and it generated all my data and the embeddings alongside that text. But then the OpenAI vector search in Spring AI to read those didn't work because it was looking for the standard OpenAI model rather than the transformed OpenAI, which actually is a separate section in the Spring AI docs. If you're curious, it's not under Hugging Face, it's sitting under Transformers, ONNX embeddings in the documentation. So just so you're aware, it does support it, but at least to me, it was an unexpected section in the docs. So be sure to check the Graph Builder repository code and ensure that the embedding and the vector search model are going to match. Otherwise, it won't find things when you try to do a search on those embeddings. I also started with a free tier database instance for Neo4j, spun up a cloud instance in Neo4j Aura, but found that Pro is faster because it can parallelize the data import with the LLM Graph Builder. Again, no issues there. If you want to use free tier, just realize it may take you a little bit longer to load that data in because it's not going to be parallelizing the requests. Also, the data that gets generated with the LLM Graph Builder is sometimes a little bit overkill and unclean, so it generates some unnecessary entities or things that just are a little bit extra, so extra relationships and things like that that maybe muddy the waters a little bit. Again, this is where specifying that data model up front can help with some of this, but the LLM Graph Builder is just a really good tool to get started. If you have some documents and you really just want to see what can I do with these or what kind of value can a graph provide, this is a really great tool to get started, but it probably wouldn't be something you would put into production, right? I also want to mention that the chatbot interface provided with the LLM Graph Builder is really fantastic. I've had really great results here querying the data and pulling results. The repo contains the retrieval queries that are involved, but there's a lot of them and they get picked and chosen based on the things that you're doing and the things that you're asking. So it is very highly curated information. And so that's why the chatbot results are really good. But just so you know, if you try to replicate this by creating your own chatbot with the data, the LLM Graph Builder one has been highly curated, so you may not get the same high quality results that you get in something you custom build. But if you want to use the built-in chatbot interface, it is really impressive and a nice tool. The next segment I want to cover is this article I came across called Unlocking the Aha Moment, Developer Relations for Startups. I want to preface this a little bit by saying that one thing I've learned is that developer relations means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It really depends the activities, the metrics, the skills, the organizational department it's put under, etc. can really vary based on who you're talking to or maybe what area in the world or company or industry you're looking at. I also will add that this post is geared towards startups. So if you're not a startup, this may not be perfectly relevant information. But the thing that I really wanted to highlight in this post is the goal of the aha moment for developers as a developer relations or a developer advocate. The developer's aha moment for a technology is what turns them into a passionate advocate. This was a framing that this article took, and I really loved this. That's what the aha moment is, what gets people excited about what a technology can do. So you might come across, look, this technology completely solved my problem, or I couldn't do this before and now I can. That's what gets developers excited about a technology. The developer wants to use that tool long term because it helped them do something they couldn't do before. As a personal example, I remember mine for Neo4j. And no matter where life takes me, I will always view Neo4j as the perfect tool for X list of things, barring something catastrophic or major changes down the road, right? But I will remember that aha moment, and I will have this kind of soft spot or personal relationship with this technology. And when I come across a scenario that I know it handles very well, I definitely will want to use that tool, right? As a developer advocate, that's the thing that I want to help other people get to for themselves. And I do have to remember that not everyone will have the same aha moment as me. So I can't walk up to somebody and give a description of how I came to find the value of Neo4j And that's going to give them their aha moment too. It doesn't really work like that. They might be dealing with different data sets, different tech stacks, different use cases, different industries, and so on. And so their aha moment is going to likely be different from mine. Although I could share mine, and that might help others get to theirs too. But again, it's not going to be perfectly replicated to others. But the article's author makes the case that developer relations should aim for that aha moment for developers and try to make that aha moment easier, faster, more streamlined, etc., and really monitor that. This is really food for thought for me in my daily work, as well as anyone who might be interested in advocacy, whether you're considering a career in it yourself or you just want to know what it is a developer advocate or developer relations engineer or developer evangelist does all day long. I was really excited to provide an update on the LLM Graph Builder and share what I've learned so far. Then I really liked the framing of how developer relations focuses on creating aha moments for developers. Thanks for listening and happy coding.